My sister stole my identity to take out $30,000 in loans, then my entire family turned against me when I pressed charges. She got arrested and sentenced to prison, but now my mom lost her house paying for legal fees and everyone blames me for destroying our family over money. I am Tucker, 25M, and I need advice on what might be the most messed up situation I have ever been in. My sister Heidi, 28F, stole my identity to take out multiple loans and credit cards. When I found out and reported her to the police, my entire family turned against me. They are saying I should have handled it privately and that I am destroying our family by involving the law. Let me give you some background. Heidi and I grew up in a middle-class family in Ohio. Our parents divorced when I was 12 and she was 15. After the divorce, our mom Laurel, 52F, moved us to a smaller apartment and worked 2 jobs to support us. Our dad Robert, 55M, remarried quickly and started a new family. He paid child support but was not really involved in our lives after that. Heidi was always the rebellious one. She got into trouble at school, started drinking at 16, and dropped out of high school during her senior year. She got her GED later but never went to college. She has had trouble holding down jobs and has moved back in with our mom at least 4 times in the past 10 years. I took a different path. I graduated high school with good grades and got a scholarship to study computer science. I worked part-time jobs throughout college and graduated debt-free. After college, I got a job at a tech company and have been working there for 3 years now. I make decent money and have been able to save up for a house down payment. About 2 years ago, I started getting serious about my finances. I began checking my credit report regularly and monitoring my bank accounts closely. I noticed that my credit score was better than I expected, which made me happy. I also noticed some small purchases on my credit cards that I did not remember making, but they were only $20 or $30 here and there, so I figured I had just forgotten about them. 6 months ago, I decided to apply for a mortgage pre-approval since I was ready to buy a house. The mortgage broker ran my credit and told me there were some issues. She said I had 3 credit cards that I had not mentioned in my application. She also said there was a personal loan for $15,000 that was currently in default. I was completely confused. I told her I only had 2 credit cards and had never taken out a personal loan. She printed out my credit report and showed me everything. There were indeed 3 credit cards I had never applied for, and a $15,000 personal loan from a company I had never heard of. All of these accounts had been opened using my social security number and personal information. I immediately contacted the credit card companies and the loan company. They told me I would need to file a police report for identity theft to dispute the charges. I was shocked that someone had stolen my identity, but I had no idea who it could be. I filed the police report the next day. The detective assigned to my case was helpful and explained that identity theft cases like this often involve someone close to the victim who has access to their personal information. She asked me to think about who might have had access to my social security number, birth date, and other personal details. I started thinking about it and realized that the timing lined up with when Heidi had moved back in with our mom about 8 months earlier. During that time, she had asked to borrow money from me several times. She said she was having trouble finding work and needed help with basic expenses. I had given her about $2,000 over those few months, which she promised to pay back but never did. I also remembered that during one of her visits to my apartment, she had been alone in my bedroom while I was making dinner. She said she was looking for a phone charger, but my important documents are kept in a filing cabinet in that room. The filing cabinet was not locked because I never thought I needed to secure my personal papers from my own family. The detective told me she would investigate all the accounts and see if she could trace where the applications were submitted from. Within 2 weeks, she called me back with the results. All of the fraudulent applications had been submitted online from IP addresses that traced back to our mom's house. The detective said this was strong evidence that someone living at that address had committed the identity theft. At this point, I knew it had to be Heidi. She was the only person who had been living at mom's house during the time period when the accounts were opened. She also had a history of financial problems and had asked me for money multiple times. I confronted Heidi directly. I went to mom's house and asked to speak with her privately. I told her I knew she had stolen my identity and used my information to open credit cards and take out a loan. At first, she denied everything. She acted shocked and hurt that I would accuse her of such a thing. But when I showed her the police report and explained that the detective had traced the applications to mom's house, her story started to change. She admitted that she had been desperate and did not know what else to do. She said she had planned to pay everything back before I found out. She claimed she only meant to borrow the money temporarily and that she never intended for me to get hurt. I asked her how much money was involved in total. She broke down and admitted that she had maxed out all 3 credit cards and had not made any payments on the loan for 4 months. The total amount was over $30,000. She said she had used the money to pay rent, buy groceries, and cover other basic expenses, but she had also spent some of it on clothes and going out with friends. I was stunned by the amount. $30,000 was more than half of what I had saved for my house down payment. Even worse, the missed payments had already started to damage my credit score, which could affect my ability to get a good mortgage rate. I told Heidi she needed to figure out how to pay everything back immediately, or I would have to let the police investigation continue. She begged me not to press charges and promised she would find a way to make things right. She said she would get a job and set up payment plans with all the creditors. I gave her 2 weeks to come up with a plan. During those 2 weeks, she applied for several jobs but did not get hired anywhere. She also contacted the credit card companies and the loan company, but they told her they needed to see proof of income before they would set up payment plans. Since she was unemployed, they would not work with her. At the end of the 2 weeks, Heidi came to me with a different proposal. She asked if I would just take over the payments and let her work off the debt by doing chores for me or helping me with projects around my apartment. She said this would be better than involving the police because it would keep everything in the family. I told her that her plan would not work. I could not afford to take on $30,000 in debt payments, and even if I could, it would not fix the damage to my credit report. The only way to clear the fraudulent accounts from my credit report was to complete the identity theft investigation with the police. Heidi got upset and accused me of not caring about family. She said I was choosing money over our relationship. She went to our mom and told her what was happening, but she did not tell the whole truth. She made it sound like I was overreacting to a small mistake and that I was threatening to send her to jail over a misunderstanding. Our mom called me and asked me to come over so we could all talk about it together. When I got there, Mom had also invited our older brother Jake, 30M, and our younger sister Sarah, 22F. Heidi had told them her version of the story, which made it sound like she had only borrowed a small amount of money and that I was being vindictive by involving the police. I explained the real situation to everyone. I showed them the credit report and the police report. I explained that Heidi had stolen over $30,000 and that the missed payments were already damaging my credit. I told them that completing the police investigation was the only way to clear the fraudulent accounts from my record. My family's reaction was not what I expected. Instead of being upset with Heidi for committing identity theft, they were upset with me for reporting her to the police. Mom said that families should handle problems privately and that involving law enforcement would only make things worse. Jake said I should just pay off the debt myself since I make good money and Heidi is struggling. Sarah said I was being selfish and that I should think about what a criminal record would do to Heidi's future. I tried to explain that I was the victim here and that Heidi had committed a serious crime, but they would not listen. They kept saying that Heidi made a mistake and that I was overreacting. They acted like I should be grateful that she only stole from me and not from strangers. The conversation got heated and ended with Mom telling me that I needed to decide what was more important, my money or my family. She said that if I continued with the police investigation, I would be choosing to destroy our family over money. I left that night without resolving anything. Heidi continued to live at Mom's house and made no effort to get a job or fix the situation. Meanwhile, I was getting calls from debt collectors about the defaulted loan, and my credit score continued to drop. After 2 more weeks of getting nowhere with my family, I decided to move forward with the police investigation. I called the detective and told her I wanted to press charges. She said she had enough evidence to arrest Heidi and that the case would proceed to the district attorney's office. Heidi was arrested 3 days later. She was charged with identity theft, credit card fraud, and loan fraud. She was released on bail, but now she has to go to court and will likely face serious consequences. Since her arrest, my entire family has cut contact with me. Mom, Jake, and Sarah all blocked my phone number and my social media accounts. Mom sent me one final text message saying that I was no longer welcome in her house and that I had chosen to destroy my own family. I have been dealing with this situation alone for the past month. I am working with the credit card companies and the loan company to clear the fraudulent accounts from my credit report, but it is a slow process. My mortgage application was denied because of the damaged credit, so I cannot buy a house until this gets resolved. I keep second-guessing myself about whether I did the right thing. On one hand, Heidi committed serious crimes and stole a large amount of money from me. She showed no remorse and made no real effort to fix the situation. On the other hand, she is my sister and now she might go to jail because of my decision to press charges. Was I wrong to report Heidi to the police? Should I have found another way to handle this situation? I feel like I had no choice, but my family's reaction makes me wonder if I made a mistake. Update 1 I posted 3 weeks ago about my sister Heidi stealing my identity to take out loans and credit cards. A lot of people asked for updates, so here is what has happened since then. First, Heidi's court case is moving forward. She was assigned a public defender and her preliminary hearing was last week. The prosecutor has offered her a plea deal. She would plead guilty to 1 count of identity theft and serve 18 months probation with restitution. If she does not take the plea deal, she will go to trial and could face up to 5 years in prison if convicted on all charges. Her public defender called me to discuss the restitution amount. The total damage to my credit and finances is now calculated at $34,000. This includes the original fraudulent charges, interest, late fees, and the costs I have incurred trying to fix my credit report. The defender said Heidi would need to pay this back over the course of her probation, which would be about $1,900 per month. Heidi has not responded to the plea offer yet. According to her defender, she is still hoping that I will drop the charges and handle this privately. She apparently believes that our family will convince me to change my mind. My family is indeed still trying to get me to drop the charges, but their approach has gotten more aggressive. Last week, my Uncle Tom, Dad's brother, showed up at my apartment unannounced. He said he had been talking to Mom and that the whole family was concerned about the situation. Uncle Tom tried to guilt me into dropping the charges. He said that Heidi was just a young woman who made a mistake and that sending her to jail would ruin her life. He offered to help Heidi pay back some of the money if I would agree to dismiss the case. When I told him that was not possible because the prosecutor was now handling the case, he got frustrated and said I was being stubborn. He also revealed something that I had not known before. Apparently, Heidi has been telling people that I had given her permission to use my credit cards and that I only reported her to the police because we had a fight about something else. She has been claiming that this whole thing is a misunderstanding and that I am using the legal system to get revenge on her for some unrelated argument. I was shocked to hear this because Heidi had never mentioned any other argument, and she had clearly admitted to me that she stole my identity without permission. Uncle Tom seemed surprised when I told him Heidi's version of events was completely false. He said he would talk to her about telling the truth, but I have not heard from him since. The situation with my family got even worse after Uncle Tom's visit. My cousin Rebecca, who is Jake's daughter, sent me a long message on social media. She said that Heidi had been like a second mother to her growing up and that I was being cruel by trying to send her to jail. She said I should think about how this would affect Heidi's future children and that I was being selfish by putting money ahead of family. I was hurt by Rebecca's message because we had always been close. She is only 19 and I do not think she understands the full situation, but it still stung to have another family member turn against me. The worst part came 2 weeks ago when I found out that my family had started a GoFundMe page to raise money for Heidi's legal defense. The page was created by my mom and it tells a completely different story than what actually happened. According to the GoFundMe description, Heidi is a struggling single mother, which is false. She has no children, who made a small mistake by borrowing money from her brother's accounts without asking permission first. It says that I am vindictively prosecuting her for a minor family dispute and that she needs money to hire a better lawyer to defend herself against my false accusations. The GoFundMe page had raised over $3,000 when I found it. I was disgusted to see that my own family was spreading lies about me to raise money. Even worse, some of the donations came from people I know, including former classmates and family friends who believed my family's version of events. I reported the GoFundMe page for containing false information. The company investigated and took down the page after I provided them with copies of the police report and court documents. This caused another wave of anger from my family, who accused me of trying to sabotage Heidi's defense. Jake called me from a different phone number, since I was blocked on his regular number, and left me a voicemail. He said I had gone too far by getting the GoFundMe page removed and that I was actively trying to destroy Heidi's life. He said that if I really cared about family, I would be helping Heidi instead of fighting her at every turn. The stress of all this family drama has been affecting other parts of my life. My work performance has suffered because I have been distracted and have had to take time off for meetings with lawyers and credit agencies. My boss has been understanding, but I can tell that the situation is becoming a problem. I have also been dealing with ongoing financial issues. Even though I am working to clear the fraudulent accounts from my credit report, the process is taking much longer than expected. The credit agencies want extensive documentation, and each company has different requirements. I have spent hours on the phone and have had to mail certified letters with police reports and identity theft affidavits. Meanwhile, I am still getting calls from debt collectors who have not yet been notified that the accounts are fraudulent. I have to explain the situation over and over again, and some collectors are skeptical and continue to demand payment. One collector even threatened to garnish my wages before I could convince them to look at the police report. My mortgage application was officially denied last month. The lender said that even though I am disputing the fraudulent accounts, they cannot approve a loan until my credit report is completely clean. This means I cannot buy a house for at least another year, maybe longer. I had been looking forward to buying my first home and had spent months researching neighborhoods and saving for a down payment. Having that goal taken away has been one of the hardest parts of this whole situation. I am still living in my small apartment and paying rent instead of building equity in a home. Last week, I got some unexpected news that made the situation even more complicated. Heidi's public defender called me again and said that Heidi wanted to make a counteroffer. Instead of taking the plea deal, she wants to plead guilty to a lesser charge and pay restitution over 5 years instead of 18 months. She would also serve community service instead of probation. The defender explained that this counteroffer would mean Heidi would pay me back at a rate of about $570 per month for 5 years. While this would be more manageable for her financially, it would mean I would not be fully compensated for 5 years. The defender also said there would be no guarantee that Heidi would actually make all the payments, and if she defaulted, I would have limited options for collecting the remaining balance. I have not given an answer to this counteroffer yet. Part of me thinks that getting some money back is better than getting nothing, but another part of me thinks Heidi should face the full consequences of her actions. The original plea deal would have her paying me back faster and would include probation supervision to make sure she actually made the payments. I have been trying to get advice on this decision, but it is hard because I do not have family support and I cannot afford to hire my own lawyer. The prosecutor is willing to consider Heidi's counteroffer, but he said the decision is ultimately up to me since I am the victim. This whole situation has made me realize how isolated I have become. I used to talk to my family several times a week, and now I have no contact with any of them. I have a few good friends, but this situation is so complicated that it is hard to explain to people who do not know my family history. I am supposed to give an answer about Heidi's counteroffer by the end of this week. I honestly do not know what to do. I want Heidi to face consequences for what she did, but I also want to get my money back so I can move on with my life. Neither option seems perfect, and I am worried that whatever I choose will just lead to more problems. Update 6 weeks have passed since my last update, and the situation has gotten even more complicated. I ended up rejecting Heidi's counteroffer for the reduced charges and longer payment plan. I decided that she needed to face the full consequences of stealing over $30,000 from me, and I was worried that a 5-year payment plan would give her too many opportunities to default. Heidi's lawyer was not happy with my decision. He tried to convince me one more time by explaining that his client was young and had no prior criminal record. He said that the original plea deal was harsh and that Heidi would struggle to make the higher monthly payments. When I refused to change my mind, he said they would reject the plea deal and take the case to trial. I was nervous about going to trial because it would mean more time, more stress, and no guarantee of getting my money back. But I felt like I had already compromised enough by allowing Heidi to plead to reduced charges instead of facing the full penalties for all the crimes she committed. The trial was scheduled for 4 weeks after Heidi rejected the plea deal. During that time, I had to meet with the prosecutor several times to go over my testimony and review the evidence. The prosecutor was confident that we had a strong case because all the fraudulent applications were traced to Mom's house, and Heidi had already admitted to the crimes when I confronted her initially. However, 3 days before the trial was supposed to start, Heidi's lawyer filed a motion claiming that I had given Heidi permission to use my credit and that the whole case was based on a misunderstanding. He submitted an affidavit from Heidi stating that I had told her she could borrow money from my accounts and that I only reported her to police after we had an unrelated argument. This was the same lie that Heidi had been telling family members, but now she was making it official in court documents. The prosecutor was surprised by this development and asked me if there was any truth to Heidi's claims. I assured him that I had never given Heidi permission to use my credit and that we had not had any argument before I discovered the identity theft. The prosecutor said that Heidi's new defense strategy was likely just a desperate attempt to avoid conviction, but it would require us to be even more thorough in proving our case. He scheduled additional meetings with me to prepare for the possibility that Heidi would testify and repeat these false claims on the witness stand. During this same time period, I discovered that my family's interference in the case had gone even further than I realized. My mom had apparently contacted the prosecutor's office multiple times to ask them to drop the charges. She had also tried to contact the judge directly, which the prosecutor said was inappropriate and could have gotten her in trouble for attempting to influence the case. Most shocking of all, I found out that Jake had been conducting his own investigation to try to find evidence that would support Heidi's false claims. He had contacted my former roommates from college and some of my coworkers to ask them questions about my relationship with Heidi. He was apparently trying to find someone who would say they had heard me give Heidi permission to use my credit cards. My former roommate Dave called to warn me about Jake's calls. Dave said that Jake had initially pretended to be doing research for a family reunion, but then started asking specific questions about whether I had ever mentioned lending money to Heidi or letting her use my credit cards. When Dave said he had never heard me mention anything like that, Jake became pushy and suggested that Dave might have forgotten or not been paying attention. Dave was uncomfortable with the conversation and eventually hung up on Jake. He called me because he was worried that Jake was trying to manufacture false testimony for Heidi's defense. I thanked Dave for the warning and immediately contacted the prosecutor to let him know what was happening. The prosecutor said that Jake's behavior could be considered witness tampering or obstruction of justice. He said he would document the incident and could potentially file additional charges against Jake if the behavior continued. He also advised me to warn any other potential witnesses that they might be contacted by my family members. I reached out to a few other people who Jake might contact, including my current coworkers and some old friends. Most of them were shocked to hear about the identity theft case and assured me they would not speak to Jake if he called them. A couple of them mentioned that they had always thought Heidi seemed unreliable, but they had never imagined she would steal from family. As the trial date approached, the stress was affecting my health. I was not sleeping well and had developed headaches that lasted for days. My work performance continued to suffer, and my boss suggested that I consider taking some unpaid leave to deal with my legal issues. I could not afford to lose income while I was still dealing with the financial impact of Heidi's crimes, so I declined the leave and tried to push through. The trial finally started last week. The first day was just jury selection and opening statements. Heidi showed up with a different lawyer. Apparently she had fired her public defender and hired a private attorney using money that Mom had borrowed against her house. The new lawyer was more aggressive and made it clear in his opening statement that he planned to argue that Heidi had been given permission to use my credit. I was called to testify on the second day of trial. The prosecutor walked me through the timeline of events and had me explain how I discovered the fraudulent accounts. I testified about confronting Heidi and her initial admission that she had stolen my identity. I also testified that I had never given her permission to use my credit cards or take out loans in my name. Heidi's lawyer cross-examined me for over 2 hours. He repeatedly asked me about my relationship with Heidi and whether I had ever lent her money before. He tried to make it seem like there was a pattern of me helping Heidi financially and that the credit card usage was just an extension of that pattern. He also suggested that I was prosecuting Heidi because I was angry about an unrelated family conflict. I stuck to the truth throughout the cross-examination. I admitted that I had lent Heidi small amounts of cash in the past, but I emphasized that I had never given her access to my credit cards or permission to take out loans. I also testified that we had not had any argument before I discovered the identity theft. The hardest part of my testimony was when Heidi's lawyer asked me about my family's reaction to the case. He made it sound like my whole family believed Heidi's version of events and that I was the only one claiming she had committed crimes. He suggested that if Heidi had really stolen my identity, my own family would be supporting me instead of supporting her. I had to explain that my family was not aware of all the facts and that they had been given false information by Heidi. The lawyer pushed back and implied that I was lying about my family's knowledge of the situation. It was painful to have my family relationships dissected in court, especially when my family was not there to support me. On the third day, Heidi testified in her own defense. She repeated the claims from her affidavit, stating that I had told her she could use my credit cards for emergencies and that I had said she could pay me back when she got back on her feet. She claimed that she thought she had permission and that she never intended to commit any crimes. Heidi's testimony was emotional and she cried several times while talking about her financial struggles. She said that she had been desperate and had thought I would understand because we were family. She also claimed that I had changed my story about giving her permission only after we had an argument about her not paying me back quickly enough. The prosecutor's cross-examination of Heidi was intense. He pointed out that she had never mentioned having permission when I first confronted her about the identity theft. He also highlighted the fact that she had used my information to open accounts at 3 different companies over a period of several months, which did not match her story about borrowing money for emergencies. Most damaging to Heidi's defense was the evidence about where the fraudulent applications were submitted from. The prosecutor showed that all the applications came from Mom's house during times when I was at work and could not have been present to give permission. He also pointed out that Heidi had lied on the applications about her employment status and income, which would not have been necessary if she really had permission to use my credit. The trial concluded yesterday with closing arguments. The prosecutor argued that the evidence clearly showed Heidi had committed identity theft and that her claims about having permission were a desperate attempt to avoid responsibility. Heidi's lawyer argued that the case was about a family misunderstanding and that the prosecution had not proven Heidi intended to commit crimes. The jury is still deliberating, but the prosecutor thinks we have a strong case. He said that Heidi's testimony actually hurt her defense because she was not able to explain away the contradictions in her story. While I wait for the verdict, I have been dealing with more family drama. Apparently, Mom took out a second mortgage on her house to pay for Heidi's private lawyer. Jake found out about this and called me from yet another phone number to yell at me about it. He said that Mom might lose her house because of the legal fees and that it was my fault for pressing charges in the first place. I was stunned to hear that Mom had put her house at risk for Heidi's defense. Jake said that Mom was confident Heidi would be found not guilty and that she would then sue me for false prosecution to recover the legal fees. He warned me that if Mom lost her house, the whole family would blame me and I would never be welcome back. This news hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything that has happened, I do not want Mom to lose her house. But I also cannot understand why she would take such a huge financial risk to defend Heidi's crimes. It feels like my entire family has lost their ability to think rationally about this situation. The jury should reach a verdict within the next few days. If Heidi is convicted, she will be sentenced within the next month. If she is acquitted, I will have to continue dealing with the damaged credit and financial losses on my own, while also facing potential retaliation from my family. Either way, I do not see how my relationships with my family can ever recover from this situation. Even if Heidi is convicted and has to pay restitution, my family will always blame me for the consequences she faces. And if she is acquitted, they will claim that I falsely accused her and put Mom's house at risk for nothing. I am trying to prepare myself for either outcome, but honestly, I just want this whole nightmare to be over. Update 3: The jury reached a verdict 3 days after I posted my last update. Heidi was found guilty on all charges: identity theft, credit card fraud, and loan fraud. The trial lasted 4 days total, and the jury deliberated for about 6 hours before reaching their decision. When the verdict was read, Heidi broke down crying in the courtroom. Mom and Sarah were there for the trial, and they were both upset by the outcome. Mom had to be escorted out because she started yelling at the prosecutor about ruining Heidi's life. Sarah just sat there staring at me with a look that made it clear she blamed me for everything. Heidi was sentenced 2 weeks later. The judge gave her 2 years in prison followed by 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay full restitution of $34,000. The judge said that identity theft was a serious crime that destroyed victims' financial security and that Heidi had shown no genuine remorse for her actions. Heidi's lawyer immediately filed an appeal, but she had to report to prison within 30 days regardless. The prosecutor explained that appeals in cases like this rarely succeed, especially when the evidence is as clear as it was in Heidi's case. During the sentencing hearing, I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I explained how Heidi's crimes had affected my ability to buy a house, damaged my credit score, and caused me to lose trust in my own family. I also talked about the stress and isolation I had experienced throughout the legal process. Heidi's lawyer asked if she could make a statement before sentencing. She apologized to me and said she never meant for things to go as far as they did. She claimed she had been desperate and had made poor decisions. However, she still maintained that she had believed she had some kind of permission to use my credit, which made her apology feel hollow. The judge was not impressed by Heidi's statement. He said that her continued refusal to take full responsibility showed that she did not understand the seriousness of her crimes. He also noted that she had lied under oath during the trial, which demonstrated a pattern of dishonesty. After the sentencing, Mom confronted me outside the courthouse. She was crying and said that I had destroyed our family by sending Heidi to prison. She said that Heidi's children, which was confusing since Heidi has no children, would grow up without their mother because of my selfishness. When I pointed out that Heidi does not have children, Mom said she meant Heidi's future children and that I had ruined Heidi's chances of ever having a normal family. Mom also told me that she was going to lose her house because of the legal bills. She said she had spent over $25,000 on Heidi's defense and that she could not keep up with the mortgage payments on top of the legal debt. She asked me to drop the restitution requirement so that Heidi could help her with the house payments when she got out of prison. I explained that the restitution was court-ordered and that I could not drop it even if I wanted to. I also pointed out that Heidi would not be in a position to help with house payments since she would need to focus on paying back the money she stole from me. Mom became angry and said I cared more about money than about family. Jake showed up while Mom and I were talking. He had not been at the trial, but he had heard about the verdict. He immediately started yelling at me about sending Heidi to prison and costing Mom her house. He said that I was vindictive and that I had been looking for an excuse to hurt Heidi for years. Jake also revealed that he had been talking to a lawyer about suing me for emotional distress and financial damages related to Mom's legal bills. He said that I had maliciously prosecuted Heidi and that our family had suffered because of my actions. His lawyer had apparently told him that such a lawsuit would be difficult to win, but Jake said he was going to try anyway. The confrontation outside the courthouse was the last time I spoke to any of my family members. Over the past month, I have heard through mutual acquaintances that Mom did indeed lose her house. She had to sell it to pay off the legal debt and is now living in a small rental apartment. Jake and Sarah have both moved out of state, apparently to get away from the fallout from Heidi's case. I also heard that Heidi tried to appeal her sentence, but the appeal was denied last week. She is currently serving her sentence at a women's correctional facility about 3 hours from where we grew up. According to the corrections website, her earliest possible release date is in 18 months if she gets good behavior credits. The restitution process has been complicated. Heidi obviously cannot make payments while she is in prison, so the court has set up a schedule for her to begin payments once she is released. However, the prosecutor warned me that collecting restitution from convicted felons is often difficult because they have trouble finding employment and housing after prison. In the meantime, I have been working with a credit repair service to clean up my credit report. The process has been slow, but most of the fraudulent accounts have now been removed. My credit score has improved significantly, though it is still not back to where it was before Heidi's crimes. Last month, I was finally able to get pre-approved for a mortgage again. The interest rate is slightly higher than it would have been 2 years ago, but I am just glad to be able to move forward with buying a house. I found a small place about an hour away from where I grew up, which will give me some distance from the whole situation. I have also been dealing with the emotional aftermath of losing my entire family. It has been strange not having anyone to call on holidays or when something important happens at work. I have gotten closer to some of my friends, and my coworkers have been supportive, but it is not the same as having family relationships. A few people have asked me if I regret pressing charges against Heidi. The honest answer is that I do not regret it, but I am sad about how everything turned out. Heidi committed serious crimes that cost me thousands of dollars and damaged my credit for years. She showed no remorse and continued to lie even during the trial. I do not think I had any choice but to pursue the case through the legal system. At the same time, I never wanted my family to turn against me or for Mom to lose her house. I wish my family had been able to see that Heidi was the one who caused this situation, not me. But they were so focused on protecting Heidi that they could not accept the reality of what she had done. I have been told by several people that my family might come around eventually, especially after Heidi serves her sentence and the emotions cool down. Maybe that will happen, but I am not counting on it. Even if they do reach out, I am not sure our relationships could ever go back to the way they were before. For now, I am focusing on rebuilding my life and moving forward. I have my job, my friends, and soon I will have my own house. It is not the life I imagined 2 years ago, but it is a life that is built on honesty and integrity rather than enabling criminal behavior. Heidi will be eligible for parole in about 14 months. When that time comes, she will have to start making restitution payments to me. I am not optimistic about actually receiving the money, but at least the legal system held her accountable for her crimes. I have learned a lot about myself and about family dynamics through this whole experience. I used to think that family loyalty meant protecting each other no matter what, but now I understand that real loyalty means holding each other accountable when someone does something wrong. My family chose to enable Heidi's criminal behavior instead of supporting the family member who was victimized by her crimes. The hardest part has been accepting that some relationships cannot be salvaged. I spent months hoping that my family would eventually understand my position and realize that I was the victim in this situation. But they were so invested in Heidi's version of events that they could not see the truth even when it was presented in a court of law. I have also learned that I am stronger than I thought I was. 2 years ago, I probably would have given in to family pressure and dropped the charges against Heidi. I would have taken on her debt and allowed her to avoid consequences for her actions. But going through this process taught me that sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone. My new house is supposed to close next month. It is a 3-bedroom place with a small yard, and I am looking forward to finally having my own space. I have been thinking about getting a dog, which is something I could never do when I was living in apartments. It will be nice to have some companionship without the drama and betrayal that came with my family relationships. Work has been going well too. My boss was impressed by how I handled the stress of the legal case while still meeting my deadlines and maintaining quality work. I got a promotion last month, which came with a salary increase that will help me afford the higher mortgage payments. I still think about my family sometimes, especially during holidays or when I have good news to share. But I have stopped checking their social media accounts and I have blocked their phone numbers to avoid any unexpected contact. I need to focus on building a new life rather than dwelling on the relationships I lost. Some people might think I was too harsh in pursuing criminal charges against Heidi. They might say that family should forgive and forget, or that I should have found a way to handle the situation privately. But those people do not understand what it feels like to have someone you trust steal your identity and then lie about it in court. Heidi stole more than just money from me. She stole my sense of security, my trust in family relationships, and my ability to achieve important goals like buying a house. The financial damage was significant, but the emotional damage was even worse. And when I tried to hold her accountable, my entire family turned against me and blamed me for the consequences of her actions. I made the right decision by pressing charges, even though it cost me my family relationships. Heidi needed to face real consequences for her crimes, and the legal system was the only way to ensure that happened. If I had dropped the charges, she would have learned that she could commit crimes against family members without facing any real punishment. I hope that Heidi uses her time in prison to think about what she did and to develop some genuine remorse for her actions. Maybe when she gets out, she will finally understand how much damage she caused and will make a real effort to pay back what she owes. But even if that happens, I do not expect to have a relationship with her again. As for the rest of my family, I have accepted that they made their choice when they decided to support Heidi's lies instead of standing by the victim of her crimes. They chose to protect a criminal instead of supporting the family member who was hurt by that criminal. That choice says something about their values and their character that I cannot ignore. I am not bitter about losing my family, but I am disappointed. I thought we had stronger bonds and better values than what they showed during this crisis. But people show you who they really are when times get tough, and my family showed me that they value protecting criminals over supporting victims. My new life might be smaller and lonelier than my old one, but it is built on a foundation of honesty and integrity. I would rather live alone with my principles intact than surround myself with people who enable criminal behavior and blame victims for seeking justice. Heidi will get out of prison eventually, and maybe she will learn from this experience. My family might realize someday that they were wrong to turn against me. But I am not waiting for either of those things to happen. I am moving forward with my life and building something better for myself, with or without the people who should have supported me through the worst experience of my life.